What's up everyone, welcome back to the channel. Pastor Ryan Dormans once again. Imagine somebody is taking a picture of you and you are an Adventist, and all of a sudden the person holding the camera says the following: say cheese. And you get offended because you are Adventist and you don't believe that you should eat cheese. That's a silly example, silly illustration, but there are many people who are under the impression that as Adventists we should not eat cheese, that eating cheese is a sin. And that's the reason why I'm making a video today, to clarify the issue as to whether or not Adventists should consume cheese. But before we get into the topic, please consider liking this video, and if you're not yet subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel. So let's get straight into the video. Let's try and clarify the issue first and foremost from the Word of God to see, should we avoid eating cheese, not only as Adventists, maybe as Christians as well in general. But this issue is directed directly to Adventists because of the teachings of the health message, etc. And I remember when I joined the church, I used to consume cheese, and many people told me that I shouldn't consume cheese because so-and-so said it's bad for you and it does certain things in your stomach, it ferments, etc. And it's causing a whole lot of issues in your stomach. But I just want to look at the issue from the Word of God, probably from the writings of Ellen White. We can look at some of the health issues concerning eating cheese, and then come to a logical conclusion as to whether we should consume cheese or avoid it entirely. So let's look at the issue of cheese. There are many people who avoid cheese because they are lactose intolerant, they are allergic to dairy, and they cannot consume cheese because it causes problems in their stomach. But a majority of people can consume cheese and they enjoy it as well. However, there are some health effects that affect your stomach and affect your digestive system. For example, cheese, according to research, cheese is very difficult to digest in the stomach, and many people have problems with digesting cheese. Okay, but let's first and foremost look at the issue from the Word of God. Should we avoid cheese based purely upon what the Word of God says? Let me just highlight a few texts and see if we should avoid cheese from the Word of God. So the first text I want to highlight to you is found in Genesis chapter 18 verse 8. So he took butter and milk and the calf which he had prepared and set it before them, and he stood by them under the tree as they ate. So just a little bit of context to this story here. Abraham has 3 visitors and he's being hospitable towards them, and he gives them butter, milk, and a calf, and he prepares a meal for them. However, there's no indication in the text that it talks about cheese, but it does talk about milk, which is dairy, and that's also cheese. Cheese is dairy as well. But let's look at another text found in the book of Isaiah and see what does it say concerning eating cheese. Isaiah chapter 7 verse 15. Curds and honey he shall eat, that he may know to refuse evil and choose the good. So this text is talking about Jesus Christ, Emmanuel, God with us, was going to come and eat curds and honey, and he was going to refuse evil and do the good. So according to this text, Jesus himself was going to consume dairy, and there's no indication in the text that we should avoid cheese. There's another text in the Word of God found in the book of Job chapter 10 verse 10, and it says the following: that do not pour me out like milk and curdle me like cheese. So according to this text, Job is pleading with the Lord, and he's saying that do not pour me out like milk and curdle me like cheese. However, once again, it's not saying that we shouldn't consume cheese, but it's being used as an illustration here. But the Word of God does talk about dairy, and apparently according to the Word of God, you can see that dairy was consumed during the time of the Bible. So the question that we need to ask ourselves today is, if the Word of God doesn't forbid us from eating cheese, where does the confusion come in, especially within the Adventist church, where people have an issue of consuming cheese? And one of the ways that the confusion comes in is concerning the writings of Ellen White. And Ellen White during her time wrote against consuming cheese, and there are various reasons why she did so. So let's look at some of the writings of Ellen White where she states that cheese is an issue for our stomachs, etc. Testimonies for the Church, volume 2, page 68. Ellen White says cheese should never be introduced into the stomach. She says further in Counsels on Diet and Food, page 368, cheese, strong cheese or sharp cheese is still more objectionable. It is wholly unfit for food. She says further that flesh, meats, butter, cheese, etc., these things do their work in deranging the stomach, exciting the nerves, and enfeebling the intellect. The blood-making organs cannot convert such things into good blood. The grease cooked in the food renders it difficult of digestion. The effect of cheese is deleterious. And that word deleterious means causing harm or damage. So according to Ellen White's writings, the effect of cheese and consuming cheese causes issues in the stomach. There's indigestion that happens, etc. And if you are lactose intolerant, it will cause issues in your digestive system. So according to the writings of Ellen White, it seems to suggest to us that avoiding cheese entirely is the best way to go. However, I need to make something very clear here today, that neither Ellen White or the Adventist Church explicitly state that eating cheese is a sin. It is not a sin. According to the Word of God, there were people who had dairy. They probably maybe even consumed cheese, although there's no evidence in the text that suggests that. But there's no prohibition against us consuming cheese. However, from the perspective of Ellen White's side, she is basically saying that cheese is harmful to our stomachs. Now, when we look at it in her time, obviously cheese was not preserved the way it is preserved today. And according to the Ellen G. White estate, they put out a statement concerning Ellen White's writings on cheese. And this is what they had to say concerning that. Pasteurization was not practiced in the time Ellen White was writing. Undoubtedly, pasteurization greatly reduces the objectionable features of the cheese. At the time Ellen White wrote, dairy herds were not tested, milk was not pasteurized, refrigeration was practically unknown, and transportation was slow. This gave the finest opportunity for bacteria to develop in the cheese. The problems of that time seem to have made many cheeses an acute, as distinguished from long-term, threat to health. That is, if the cheese was infected with unhealthful bacteria, one would become sick quite soon after eating it. Today, one does not hear of this kind of problem very much with cheese. Those arguing against cheese today often base their prohibitions on long-term threats such as cholesterol or concerns such as allergies that affect only a relatively small part of the population. So according to this statement, the issues connected with eating cheese during the time of Ellen White is not connected to us today. For example, we have refrigeration, we have transportation, which is not an issue. We have the testing of milk, we have pasteurization, etc. So most of the issues that were an issue in the past may not necessarily be an issue today. And if you're going to argue against eating cheese, according to this statement, many people have allergies because of consuming cheese, or they're lactose intolerant, or there is other issues such as high cholesterol, etc. Okay, so let's come to a logical conclusion based on what I've just said in this video. First and foremost, we need to answer the question, is eating cheese a sin? According to the Word of God and according to the writings of Ellen White, if you may, it is not a sin. However, there are health issues that many people face concerning eating cheese, such as lactose intolerance, cholesterol issues, allergies, etc. And if you are dairy intolerant, you need to be careful if you are consuming cheese. And also the principle that we need to apply here is eating things in moderation. The Lord has given us things to eat on this earth, the clean things that we should eat according to the Word of God. And even those clean things need to be eaten in moderation. The Word of God speaks against gluttony, or overeating or overindulging. And even if you eat something clean or something that may be healthy for you, it can be injurious to your health or to your body. So you need to be careful what you consume and how you consume it as well. So guys, what do you think? Should Adventists or Christians consume cheese? Please let me know your thoughts or your questions or your comments in the comment section below. And as always, we all know someone who needs to know, so let them know. Share this video with as much people as you can. God bless you, and I hope to see you again on the next video.